branches stay underground and gives the plant a particular ability to resist the stresses of nature. Pelargonium sidoides is part of the genus of Pelargonium. It's part of the geranium family, and arguably it's the most important plant of that family, and it has had considerable importance for centuries in local traditional healing, and we will find out what that is in a minute. It grows in the coastal mountainous regions of South Africa, and you will have here a look at the leaves and the flowers. The leaves are heart-shaped. They have a velvety touch. They're aromatic, actually, together with the little stems that you see here. The most characteristic part is that the flowers have this darkish, blackish appearance, and that distinguishes it from other Pelargonium plants that are more pink. And it is also interesting, of course, that the plant will flower in the South African spring and summer and will be harvested in the fall. So that means that it actually flowers during our winter and one harvests it in our spring. So a plant that is eminently suitable for winter illnesses actually grows during our winter time. The plant, again, we look at it now specifically at the roots, because this is the important part from which the extracts or the teas are made. And these roots start being very fragile when they're in their first year, and then slowly as they grow, you see that they become increasingly thick, and then they get this appearance when they become stressed more and more to the natural environment. And eventually, here at the top, you see this typical appearance of extremely thick roots. They get sliced ultimately into the typical reddish-looking slices that are prepared then for commercial use. And these are then being dried appropriately. Eventually, you see a reddish powdered extract that is being obtained, and I can assure you that when you taste this this original powder that has not been prepared yet for the supplements that we will take, this powder tastes incredibly sticky, woody, very tart. It sticks to the roof of your mouth, and you will try a long time afterwards to wash it down with some water. Now, before we go into the constituents of this reddish-brown extract, let me just go back one more time and ask the question, can the plant itself, can the totality of the plant, can the harmony of the roots and the leaves teach us something about what it actually wants to tell us, how we're going to use it? We all believe that it is really important that in the future we begin to develop this ability to have a sense for the fact that the totality of a plant gives you an insight into its aliveness, into its whole being that goes beyond the sum of its parts. So in order to understand that, of course, we need the help of some of the insights of Rudolf Steiner's. Based on the fact that everybody here has heard of him, I will skip the complete biography, or at least the outline of it. Let me just remark, though, that it is still an amazing thing that in our culture he's hardly known. And one of the most fundamental discoveries that Rudolf Steiner made was this gaining of an understanding that man, if you will, is an inverted plant, or the other way around, meaning that the plant actually has this inverse relationship to us. The roots of the plant really correspond in their function and anatomy to our brain and the nerves. The leaves correspond to the heart, lungs, and the sexual reproductive organs of the plant correspond to the lower part of our reproductive and digestive area. Now, that is one of the fundamental understandings. But within this, we have a special category where we can now look at the plant, at specific areas of the plant, and we will discover that the same principle again holds true in a microcosmos, meaning that plants that will be more thin, that will be fine, that will be more sensitive, have a relationship to the brain, to literally the long nerves that we have in us. And then those plants and those parts of the plants that are thicker, that literally have the fat belly, they correspond to the digestive tract. So let me give you an example here. We all know the plant celandine, and we know curcumin, the spice, the herb curcumin. And look at the roots of the celandine. They're very fine. They're enormously branched out. And interestingly enough, celandine has an enormous amount of alkaloids in its roots. And if you overdose with celandine, you will get nerve paralysis, cramping, spasms, etc. On the other hand, if you look at the turmeric, the curcumin here, you will see very thick, almost potato-like roots. And obviously, we all know that curcumin is related to the digestive tract, to the metabolism. And here you have another picture of what they look like in real life. The plant itself portrays where to what part of the body it goes. Now, of course, celandine, you will say, has also an effect on the gallbladder. But its effect on the gallbladder and bile secretion is more in the direction of a nerve sense process, as opposed to the curcumin that is directly metabolically active. Now, having said this, let's look one more time at the place of Pelargonium. And I've picked two more plants just to simply emphasize the point. On the one hand, look at ginseng. It has an enormous root and a very small stem and aerial part above ground. You would expect that ginseng would be more active on the brain and the nervous system. On the other hand, look at barberry. Barberry is a large bush. It has a yellow constituent that extends through the entire plant. It basically draws its entire metabolism into the roots. So now it becomes more metabolically active. And in the middle, you have the Pelargonium plant, which you can see would be situated between the two of them. It is neither entirely root, nor is it entirely leaves. So what can we expect from that? Well, we can expect that this will be evident also in the extraction. So here, almost literally, you have ginseng for the gray matter. You have the berberine, the yellow sulfur-like looking, almost literally sulfur-like looking for the metabolism. And then in the middle, you have the Pelargonium extract that, in a sense, imitates the blood. Now, here we are not dealing with the ancient alchemist law of signature. We're dealing here with new spiritual scientific insights that can be demonstrated scientifically, and I hope that at a later time we will have the opportunity to really go into some detail in that direction. But so much for today. This explains, however, partially, why in the traditional healing in South Africa, the Pelargonium plant has been used for respiratory tract irritation, even for the treatment of tuberculosis, and also for gastrointestinal complaints. And the plant became famous by the help, so to speak, of an Englishman who was diagnosed with tuberculosis in England in the 1800s, and he was sent to South Africa more or less as a vacation. And there, through one of the local healers, he received Pelargonium and was cured of tuberculosis. So he came back with this news to England, and he overdid it in what he promised could be done. So the plant had a brief period of being very well known, and then it came more or less in disrepute. Recently, however, meaning for the last 20, 30 years, it has become very famous again because of the research that I will show you in a minute. Now, let's go back to this extract and see what the constituents are. Here we're approaching now the more customary analysis of modern technology. And Pelargonium has the coumarins in it. These are the most important constituents. One of them is called uncalin, and you have here the chemical structure of uncalin. Pelargonium has also in it tannins and various other phenolic compounds, which we will not emphasize today. There are two companies that are making reliable extracts, or at least the beginnings of the extract that one needs then for the actual supplement. One of them is the Schwabe company, a German company. The other one is Flaxman, a Swiss company. They have identical constituents and standardization, so they can be used interchangeably. And here you see a thin layer chromatography where basically the bottom row here shows that the active ingredients are present in both. Now, I'd like to go into the mechanism of action so that if there are any questions at the end, we can go into them. But right now, I'd like to get more to the clinical part. And part of the mechanism of action that is important is that it affects, Pelargonium affects the ciliary beat frequency. Now, we all know that the cilia are the active little hairs in the respiratory tract that bring out the mucus and have important functions in detoxification of the respiratory tract. And Pelargonium has been studied and has been shown to increase the ciliary beat frequency by up to 33% over controls. So that's very significant. And you have here the graph that goes with it. And you can see here the increase over control. Next, Pelargonium has very important immune functions. It increases the ability to phagocytose by approximately 50% over controls. It increases the oxidative burst in the macrophages, which are important for the destruction of the bacteria. It induces the gamma interferon system. It increases the level of cytokines, and especially importantly, it increases the level of secretory IgA, and I will come back to the last one in a minute. In one study that was done, 2 cell lines were looked at, both bone marrow-derived macrophages, and you can see there that particularly this uncalin that we're talking about, for which the extracts are standardized, really was able to very significantly be induced. Consequently, the author of that study concludes that the current data provide convincing support for the improvement of immune functions at various levels, and hence, it validates the medicinal use of Pelargonium. Now, let's switch over for a second to the relationship between Pelargonium and bacteria. And they've done some very interesting studies looking at group A streptococci, and specifically the Streptococcus pyogenes. Now, what happens here is that there are 2 phenomena that are important to us and that are very interesting. In this chart, you can see that when human epithelial cells were treated with increasing doses of Pelargonium, the adhesion, the attachment of the, quote, bad bacteria to the epithelial cells decreased steadily. Now, these human epithelial cells are the same that are the living cells that line our throat. On the other hand, you have in the same study this particular phenomenon where the Pelargonium extracts actually helped and induced an increased adhesion of the bacteria to the so-called buccal epithelial cells. Now, these are the cells that are normally on their way to becoming dead and being sloughed off, coughed out, swallowed by the organism. This is indeed a very beautiful way for nature to deal with the problem of incoming bacteria, that the pelargonium helps the healthy cells not to allow invasion by the bacteria. On the other hand, the bacteria are urged, so to speak, to hook on to the cells that are dead and to be pushed out of the organism. And this may explain a lot. You will see here an immunofluorescence study where the small dots are showing the attachment of bacteria to the epithelial cells. After the treatment, there is no such attachment. And in conclusion, the inhibition of the invasion of the epithelial cells by the microorganisms allow us to make the statement that pelargonium treatment may be useful in preventing recurrent strep infections. As a side remark, let me say that a study has also been done showing that pelargonium reduces the adhesion of H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, to the human stomach cells, and that is an in situ study, as the ones before, obviously. I'm switching now over to viruses, and I will keep this relatively short. Pelargonium has been shown to again prevent the penetration of the herpes simplex 1 and 2 into host cells. And that's a very different mechanism of action from acyclovir, where acyclovir is active only after the virus has penetrated the cells. So it's intracellular. So by doing this, through this mechanism, we can see that there's a potential there to actually mix the pelargonium into a cream substrate and use it as a topical therapeutic use against all types of external herpes skin infections. On a different level altogether, pelargonium interferes with the replication of the influenza A virus, respiratory syncytial virus, human coronavirus, para-influenza, and Coxsackie, but not adeno and rhinoviruses. This is a very important slide that I would like to explain. As you well know, every time you get a cold, one of the characteristics is that you feel miserable. So by and large, this is called sickness behavior. So the symptoms are the malaise, the aches and pains in the limbs, the lack of appetite, headaches maybe, but just an overall sense of ill feeling. Well, this has been replicated in an animal study by giving the animals LPS, which is a lipopolysaccharide. So that's a fraction of a bacteria. And when you inject LPS into the animals, you can create an inflammatory state that mimics the state of inflammation that would occur after and during a viral infection, a disease. And what happens when you inject the animals with LPS is that when you offer them a place where they are situated, they will tend to stay there. So think that you have a big, large box that half of it is exposed to light and the other one is offering darkness. If you place the sick animal into the light area, the animal will tend to stay there. The sicker the animal, the longer it will stay in the light area because it just won't move. A very healthy animal will either go and hide in the dark, or it will go back and forth between the light and the dark. So what you see here is the following. That look at this one here, the control. This is the amount of time, more or less, that is spent by controlled animals in the light box. Next to it, you have animals that have been given the same, you have 4 groups of animals that have all been given LPS. So they are all sick. Some of them, however, have gotten no pelargonium, then 100, 200, and 400 milligrams. So increasing doses of pelargonium have been given. What you will notice here is that the ones that received the highest dose of pelargonium recovered, became healthy, and moved away from the light. Then in the same, this begins to approximate the control. So it is a tremendous improvement that the LPS can do, that the Pelargonium can achieve. Now here you have a group that has been given only the Pelargonium, and it is identical to the control group, meaning that the Pelargonium itself did not make the animals sick at all. This is a very significant finding because we can now say in general, and also based on other studies that I will show you in a minute, that that Pelargonium inhibits sickness behavior. So Pelargonium improves symptoms that are following chronic stress or trauma of various kinds. They improve anorexia, depression, listlessness, fatigue, sleep disorder, anxiety, poor concentration. I love this word, indifferentism. I think just about everybody needs a dose of that, Pelargonium. Aches and pains and malaise. So it is probably important to note that the use of Pelargonium essentially goes way beyond treating colds and flus. I'm switching over now to the RCCTs, which are, as we all love to hear, randomized controlled clinical trials. And I want to give you first a summary of an overall impression. These clinical studies now in people have basically confirmed that Pelargonium can relieve annoying symptoms such as sore throat, stuffy runny nose, cough, mucus obstruction, and bronchitis and sore throat. Overall, Pelargonium speeds up the recovery and reduces absence in school days and at the workplace. And overall, it has an excellent safety profile and tolerability in the people who took it, both adults and children. So this is important because the epidemiology speaks for itself. I will make this short. Most of you know this. Adults get at least 2 to 4 colds per year, children 10 and more. And most of the time, these episodes are caused by viruses, or they're said to be caused by viruses. In fact, probably what's going on is that the immune system is out of balance. But the problem is that in the absence of other reliable methods, they're usually being treated with antibiotics, and that is not good. The economic impact is enormous. I will skip over that, but look at the numbers a little bit, and you see that we're talking about a significant impact here. Let's look at some of the studies. In this particular study by Mathis, 468 adults with acute bronchitis were observed. And the primary outcome here, as in some of the studies that follow, was the observing of changes in the so-called bronchitis severity score, BSS. And this bronchitis severity score usually starts at about 20. And then one sees how far down it goes. It can go down to 1, 0. That would be the ideal. 0 would be essentially cure. And they've looked here at the baseline, from baseline to day 7. And as you can see, there was a statistically significant difference between the treated and the placebo groups. The treated groups decreased by close to 6 points. The placebo group 3 points. But what is more interesting even is that the work inability was a mere 16% in the treated group, but was still almost 50% in the placebo group. So that is, again, a sign for the significant improvement in the overall health and sense of well-being of the patient. In another study, 124 patients with severe bronchitis were observed for 7 days, and essentially the conclusion was that by day 4, remissions occurred in 70% of the patients as under treatment, as opposed to 33% in placebo. Yet another study showed marked improvement in sputum production and in the other accompanying symptoms of bronchitis. And the bronchitis symptom score, again, went down considerably more in the treated group. Finally, I'd like to show here a study that was done in 742 children. And these children were really sick at the beginning of the study. They had a variety of symptoms. I will show you in the next slide specifically what. And after 14 days, their severity score went down to 1.4. Also, the loss of appetite that was originally present in about 65% of the patient went down to 27% of the children at the time of the last observation. Now, you can see more of this in this slide, where the initial investigation in the blue shows that 65.8% of all children had loss of appetite. It went down to 27%. Look at the decrease in vomiting. Look at the decrease in diarrhea. Look at the decrease in headache. Look at this incredible decrease in fever. So a very significant improvement. The tolerability was excellent. There was hardly a child that had an unsatisfactory feeling about the treatment. And I would like to summarize then, consequently, that in a systematic literature review of 6 of these randomized controlled clinical studies, it was demonstrated that Pelargonium significantly reduced acute bronchitis by day 7 with no serious adverse events reported. All right, more specifically on colds and flus. As we all know, most of the time colds are caused by viruses, and yet we are being treated, doctors are treating with antibiotics, which is not appropriate, but alternatives are lacking, so we need to be looking for other forms of treatment. In a study showing Pelargonium treatment to 103 patients with nasal drainage, nasal congestion, and these other symptoms, after 10 days of treatment, 78% of the treated patients got complete relief of symptoms. And I would like to show you this chart here, where you see in the darker column here, you see what happens in less symptoms. So the higher you go in the column, the less symptoms there are for the various types of complaints. So here you have one, for example, sneezing reduced significantly, sore throat reduced significantly, hoarseness reduced, nasal drainage reduced, and so on. So an overall improvement in symptoms. What I would like to show here is, from this particular study, is that you have the other way around now. The higher you go with the gray, with the less dark column, the more you have an improvement. And I'd like to concentrate particularly on this column here and this column here, because what the two of them show is that Pelargonium very significantly reduced weakness and reduced exhaustion. So people felt plain stronger and an increased sense of well-being during the illness. Finally, a slide here from a different study where they were looking at 143 patients. They all had essentially very bad sore throat, viral induced non-group A beta hemolytic strep, so more than likely a viral origin, but they had a very severe symptom score. They call it this time tonsillopharyngitis severity score, and you can see how it decreases to placebo and where you are with the treatment with Pelargonium. Finally, I would like to go to this study with athletes. In general, it is known that athletes who are doing very strenuous workout have a so-called window during which time, so many hours or a day after the severe workout, they may be more susceptible to flus and colds than people that are not exercising. Now, this goes only to extreme athletes, but nevertheless it is important also for the weekend warriors. And it is postulated, because of studies that have been done, that the reason for that is a decrease in salivary IgA, so salivary immune globulin A, which then allows more of the outside germs, quote unquote, viruses and bacteria, to penetrate the oropharynx. Well, in this study, it was shown that salivary IgA is being stimulated in athletes by Pelargonium, so that you can see the difference here between the placebo group and the group that was given the Pelargonium. I think that this gives a pretty good picture for what we're dealing with here. We will come back to the summary one more time, but just to review, Pelargonium very helpful in colds, in bronchitis, upper respiratory tract infections, possibly preventing strep infections, and possibly, although not studied adequately yet, also effective in a number of gastrointestinal problems. Now, the question arises, of course, what is the safety of this herbal extract? And I believe that all the evidence shows that it is extremely safe. And you have a summary here. In all the studies, it was well tolerated with minimal or no side effects. In laboratory investigations, no liver or other organ toxicity were found. And now comes a let me skip the anticoagulation for a second and actually just simply say that perhaps there is a theoretical, but only theoretical consideration that one should pay somewhat attention to the iron absorption in the people that might be taking Pelargonium extracts, the supplement, for a very prolonged period of time. What happens to people that might want to start with it in September and go all the way to April? I believe that it is a completely theoretical fear. Nevertheless, since Pelargonium has a considerable amount of tannins in it, and tannins may interfere with iron absorption, one could potentially try that out one time and test patients if that would apply towards the end of a long usage period and see if there are any iron issues at that point. I believe that all of that is theoretical, first of all, because the studies have been done for longer periods of time. People have been taking Pelargonium now for many years, and there's never been a report of an iron deficiency caused during the taking of Pelargonium. Nevertheless, here is a mention. One can avoid all of that by simply telling a patient to take the supplement, whether it is a tablet or a liquid, outside of the regular meal time, which probably would increase the absorption anyway. The other issue that is being brought up sometimes is there concern about coagulation, bleeding time? The reason for that is that umcalin, the active ingredient, is a coumarin. Now, when coumarins are metabolized, they can become anticoagulants. They are related then to the drug Coumadin. It turns out, in fact, that that is a non-issue. And I will show that to you here. They've actually done a study where they have looked at what happens in this respect. They've looked at the bleeding time of controls. Just get my pointer working. So of controls, here the black ones are the controls. And then they have just looked at what happens when we're giving Pelargonium alone. And here you see that it is almost identical to the completely untreated controls. However, when we give the animal warfarin, then the anticoagulant, then suddenly the bleeding parameters, of course, shoot up and get dramatically changed. However, when Pelargonium is given together with warfarin, either there is no increased change in bleeding parameters or there's actually less. So that goes to show that there's absolutely no concern in that direction. They've also done studies on Pelargonium together with warfarin, and you can see from this chart that the kinetics and the elimination of warfarin out of the body do not change at all in the presence of pelargonium. The dosage depends on what product you will use. In general, the adults would need for bronchitis or for a cold, a milder infection, 80 milligrams per day. 80 milligrams is the total amount of the extract that contains in it a minimum of 0.3% of the umkalin. And the two companies are producing a standardized extract that is then prepared for commercial use that has these parameters. Now, if you have a more severe sinusitis, you can essentially double the dose. For the children, it's perhaps half the dose for the adults. I don't believe that there's any toxicity, and in general, for my patients, I'm recommending that they take actually more than that, maybe 80 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day, depending on the severity of their flu, and then the results are very good. I've just brought this up here quickly because we should just have a comparison. Look at the difference between the claimed benefits of pelargonium versus marshmallow, ivy, or echinacea. That gives us a little bit of a feeling for how they compare. The question is, can we increase the efficacy of the pelargonium extract when we make a commercial preparation? Is there anything that we can do to it besides the fact that it is standardized? And we believe that there is. If one combines the standardized extract with a whole root mixture, if one adds to the preparation the ashes of the root, from which then one obtains the salts and minerals of the plant, and if one adds the potencies of the root, in which case one will have a more assured access to those higher levels of the life body, the soul, and the spiritual beyond the physical changes. We believe that the product should be non-alcoholic. The production should obviously be compliant with good manufacturing procedures. And we think that it is important that when the product gets made, that it's done with positive intentions on sunny days with good energies at the right time of the day in the morning, and that would increase the quality of the formula that one then is taking. I'm bringing up the slide again to simply remind everybody that Rudolf Steiner specifically talks about tannins, and that and these are present in enough quantities in the extract that it gives it an absolutely unforgettable taste. And then Rudolf Steiner says that the tannins are stimulating the ego organization to work stronger towards the physical, to really penetrate the physical stronger. And we believe that this is one of the greatest problems that we have in medicine today, that we're dealing with people and with human constitutions where people cannot really penetrate their physical body enough, that they're sort of floating a little bit above. So anything that could stimulate the ego organization towards the physical, to grab the physical better, is actually has a very salutary influence. Rudolf Steiner talks about plant ashes, that they can increase the breathing and the respiratory capacity, which is where our belief in the necessity to add ashes to the formula comes in. And of course, he talks about the various ingredient potencies, substance potencies that go in their effects beyond the physical. Here I'd like to show you some images of what it looks like when one actually makes one of these formulas. And you can see here that the attempt is made to actually bring this completely insoluble product into a good solution, and it is an interesting alchemical process here to make it soluble and to improve the taste such that it is actually a pleasure to take. There's always a certificate that should be given that shows that one is in fact having pelargonium in the mix. And finally, I would like to summarize that pelargonium is a natural cold care from the root. I've reviewed with you the threefold activity profile against a number of microbes, improvement of the immune system, and improvement of the functionality of the lungs and, by extension, the digestive processes. We have shown that multiple studies have reported the shortening of the duration and reduced severity of the various types of irritations and illnesses, and that it acts fast and it is proven to be safe for adults and children. So I thank you for your attention. I hope that this told you something about it, and I will turn it over to Mark now to just tell us a couple of more words at the end.
Great. I hope you can hear me now. Ross, can you confirm that? Because I was on mute. Yeah?
Yes, I can.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. We do have a few minutes if people want to enter questions. So the way you do that is there's a little orange arrow up on the top of your dashboard. You'd want to make sure you click that so you can see the dashboard. And then there'll be a section for questions, and you would just click in the box there, type in your question, and send it over. And if we get some questions, we'd be happy to take a couple of minutes to answer some of those questions. While you're doing that, if anybody has some questions, let me just tell you a couple of things. A lot of the information that Dr. Antia was talking about is available on the two websites. One is the True Botanica company website that you see in front of you, truebotanica.com, and the other is the foundation website, which is truebotanica.foundation.org. In the company website, if you look in the health topics section, you'll find articles on several of the different substances that we've looked at, and we'll be adding to that on a regular basis. And on the foundation website, it's in the articles section. We have been recording the session, and if technicalities work out okay, we will also on the foundation website try to put the recordings of some of the webinars that people can come back and listen to. I'll have a few more things to say, but I see some questions coming in, so let me go to the questions, and then at the end we'll finish up. So let me see. We've got a lot of questions, and if we can't get to all the questions, then please feel free to email us at the info@True Botanica Foundation. So one of the questions here is, Dr. Antia, is how does pelargonium compare to other products that you care for colds or others on the market, such as oxypsilocybin, vitamin D, mushrooms, etc.?
Well, it probably, by and large, is a matter of effectiveness. Some patients will respond better to one item than others. In my experience, this plant is uniquely effective. I have been repeatedly surprised to have people come in with a very bad cold and then take this supplement for about 4 or 5 times a day, essentially every hour or two, and wake up the next morning feeling completely well. And that has happened enough times to actually surprise me. And in general, I think for the audience that we have at this webinar, it's not going to be so much of an issue, but for the practitioner at large, to have this number of studies is really impressive. I mean, the the safety has been demonstrated, the effectiveness has been demonstrated. I think that those are the pluses over other remedies. But again, if you have a patient or a customer, or if you want to take it, and you have a severe vitamin D deficiency, well, all the supplements in the world are not going to help you if you have a nutritional problem. So, so obviously one has to be checking those kind of things. As far as the mushrooms are concerned, what attracts me about Pelargonium is that it seems to have a whole bunch of non-specific benefits. So you're not risking to develop sort of a one-sided emphasis that'll then bring you out of balance in other areas. It is mild enough that I suspect in the hands of the right researcher, it could be demonstrated to actually be a nice adaptogen so that it has an intrinsic balance to it. Perhaps so much for right now.
Okay, great. The next question is a practical one, just asking, again, how much does one take? If you could review that again briefly.
Well, it's important to understand this. In a webinar like the one we're having right now, we have taken great pains to make sure that we present a healing herb, that we present an objective objective results of research. We are not here to plug a specific product or another. So there are several products on the market that have Pelargonium in them. That's why I was somewhat veiled when I said, well, we believe that it is an even better product if you check and make sure that that product has the ashes and the salts and the minerals and the non-alcoholic manufacture, etc. But among those products, and one has to distinguish between the product and the ingredient that we have just presented, among those products, True Botanica has one. And of that liquid product that we make, the serving is 80 milligrams. So you can either give one serving or 2 or 3 a day. I don't think that there is a toxicity even if you take 3 servings a day of a Pelargonium extract. Now, you can divide one serving into perhaps half a teaspoon, and you take then half a teaspoon every hour throughout the day. You can take one serving every 2 hours. That's completely okay.
Great, good, thank you. And I guess I would just add, you know, again, if you look back at what was presented in terms of the total milligrams per day, then you can look how much is it in each of the different products, and that would be clear there. Maybe we'll take one more question as we're almost at our hour. You said that the Pelargonium increases the adhesion of bacteria to the dying buccal cells. What about the good bacteria? Should we be concerned about losing any of the good bacteria in that process?
It's a good question, and I don't think that I can answer it as though I would know a research answer. However, from my experience and looking at the other products that we're dealing with at True Botanica, specifically the probiotic, the oral probiotic called Bliss K12, which is in our True Defense. If one looks at all the phenomena that are related to the mouth, normal bacteria, and the germs that are the invaders that are coming in from the outside, the problem seems to be very lopsided in the direction that the lining of the mouth and of the throat are very much under a constant stress. And consequently, it's more a matter of being able to deal properly with the incoming aggravating factors than to be worried about the ability of the body to regenerate then the normal cells. I am not I'm not making perhaps 100% sense or any sense, but what I'm trying to indicate is that that does not seem to be a problem at all.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. We'll start to wrap up. If we couldn't get to your question or you have questions afterwards, again, please email us at info@truebotanicafoundation.org. That's on the screen right now. And we would also very much appreciate if people could send us any feedback regarding the webinar today. Again, we plan to do future webinars, and whatever you can let us know, good or bad, will help us in planning the future webinars or questions or concerns you would like to see addressed. As I mentioned before, yeah.
One more before you wrap up completely for the participants. You know, I have told you that I know an unsatisfactory answer when I hear one, and that came from me. And I hope that at least somebody is going to remember this question and come back in a couple of months and ask it again to see if I have anything different to say. Until then, however, I think the reasonable answer would be this. Considering the fact that all these people are given the Pelargonium and then they are healthier than they were before and have less recurrent tonsillitis and less recurrent respiratory disease, it seems to stand to reason that there's been an improvement in the overall healthy microflora of the mouth and throat rather than a damage to it. So that's the only sort of logical comeback that I have. Yeah, great. So I'm done with that.
Thanks. Good. Thanks for adding that. So once again, information, there's a full article about the Pelargonium on both websites. The Foundation site has multiple PDFs with the references and the full articles of the research that Dr. Rentia was referring to. Also on the Foundation site, we have an events section that lists presentations where we'll be participating in person, and we'd love the opportunity to meet any of you if you happen to be in that area. So if you want to take a look at that, it's important to us to have a personal connection with people, and the more we can do that, then we have a stronger foundation for these online meetings. The Foundation, just briefly, again, is a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we depend on support from the public to continue the work that we're doing with the research, the education, and the social outreach. So we encourage you to take a look at the website. There's a lot of interesting information there. Some of the areas, basically for a small donation of $10, it opens the entire website to you, which is where some of this information is behind. And obviously, if people are able, you can donate more than that. And again, that will greatly support the work we're doing here. Our current plan is to hold the webinars on the last Wednesday of every month. The next date will certainly be on Wednesday, January 25th, again at 3 p.m. Central Time. We'll announce the details via email, so if you're not on our email list, please go to the website and sign up. And we'll also post it under the webinar section on both websites, and I'm sure it'll show up on the Facebook pages and things like that. Once again, on behalf of the whole team here at True Botanica, we want to thank you all for joining us today and for your interest and support, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.